أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وبعد رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي ربنا زدنا علما يا كريم. Inshallah, we're going back to our series of Quranic stories, and we had left off at the story of Ibrahim alayhi salam. And if you remember, just a recall, because it's been almost 2 or 3 weeks that we haven't touched on that story. As a recall for everyone, we talked about Ibrahim alayhi salam. We talked about the nature and the environment in which he grew up. We talked about the political environment around Ibrahim alayhi salam at that time. And then we touched upon a story of Ibrahim alayhi salam in reference to his dad. So we talked about that conversation, that he's giving da'wah to his father. Then we talked about him giving da'wah to his nation, about the whole story of idols and, فَعَلَهُمْ كَبِيرُهُمْ هَذَا, this, elder idol, he is the responsible one, he is the one that has done it. So we talked about Ibrahim alayhi salam first giving da'wah to his family. Then Ibrahim alayhi salam giving da'wah to his immediate city and the people and the locality and the community. And then he realizes that if the local people and the family they are not accepting, then I'm going to try a political change. I'm going to attempt a political change. And if we attempt a political change, and if he succeeds, then there is hope. But then he has the entire conversation, أَلَمْ تَرَ إِلَى الَّذِي حَاجَّ إِبْرَاهِيمَ, did you not look at the one that argued with Ibrahim alayhi salam? And we talked about that entire story. So these are the 3 marahil, or 3 stages, in which Ibrahim alayhi salam, he attempted his best to pass on the message, keeping in mind that he alone was the only believer on the face of this earth, other than his wife and Lut alayhi salam. Kana ummatan. And it is also mentioned that when he was an ummah, when he was entirety, his entire Ibrahim alayhi salam himself, he was the ummah. I.e., some of the scholars have said that if you were to put the iman of the entire people of the world, if they were to be Muslims, and if you were to weigh the iman of Ibrahim alayhi salam, la rajaha imanu Ibrahim. Ibrahim alayhi salam would have been a lot more. His weight of iman would be a lot more than that. Likewise, Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam told us about who? Abu Bakr radiallahu an, right? That if you were to take the iman of Abu Bakr, and if you were to put on the other scale Umar, Uthman, Ali, Hassan, Hussein, Abu Hurairah, Aisha, all Abdullah ibn Umar, Abdullah ibn Abbas, Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, all of these great scholars, if you were to put them on the other side, and the entire ummah of Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, ila yawm al-qiyamah, until the day of judgment, la rajaha imanu Abu Bakr. The iman of Abu Bakr would be a lot more. Radiyallahu an. So when that particular environment, he struggled, but there was no success, i.e. the results were nil. At that point, he decides that it is time for me to leave the land. So at this point, Ibrahim alayhi salam, he decides to leave from where he was in Babil to where? إِنِّي ذَاهِبٌ إِلَىٰ رَبِّي سَيَهْدِينَ. He decided that he's going to leave to where? Palestine. He's going to go to Palestine with his wife Sarah, or in some of the tafsir books it is mentioned, Sarah. I.e., if you were to look at her, you would be happy. Sarah, min sarra yasurru. But the predominant is Sarah. And Lut alayhi salam. And Lut alayhi salam is mentioned that either he was Ibn Khalatu, i.e. he was his cousin, right? Or he was the brother of Sarah. There are two things mentioned. Can we close the door at the back, please, if it's possible? It's causing It reminded me of a story right now of that incident, the distractions, right? I said the door, all of you looked at the back. It's really interesting. It reminded me of a story of Baqi ibn Makhlad. He was sitting there and, he was studying with his teacher. And very famous story. He was studying with, who was he studying with? Who knows? Baqi ibn Makhlad. He was studying with Imam Ahmad. So he was studying there and people said, the entire city shook. And they said, feel, there's an elephant. So every student that was with him, they left. Because they've never heard, they've read Alam Tara Kaifa Fa'ala Rabbuka Bi Ashabil Fil, but they don't know what this fil is, so they need to look at this fil. Today you can Google it. So everyone left except Baqi ibn Makhlad. So he said, why are you not going? He said, I didn't travel from all this way and this safar that I did to learn knowledge. I didn't travel so I can go look at a field. I traveled so I came to learn from you, and since everyone is gone, let's learn. This is the opportunity, right? So even at the time of the prison, when Ahmad ibn Hanbal was in prison, this was the one student he always taught. So as he would be taken from one place to another, he would always find him. And then when they had put a complete ban on him that you could not teach, Baqi ibn Makhlad would always walk with him, and he would pretend to be a beggar and he would receive all the ahadith from Imam Ahmad, right? So don't look at the door. The moral of the story. Anyhow, so what happened was, at this point he says he's going to do hijrah, and he says, Inni dhahibun ila rabbi sayahdin. I am headed towards my Rabb, he will guide me. And this brings us to a very important point, which is that many of us, we migrated, or our parents migrated, and we came to these lands. And in these lands, we can live, and the only condition, if you were to look at the majority of the ulama and their permissibility, the only condition we have to live in these lands, because these are not the lands of Muslims, the condition we have is as long as you can practice your faith, but more importantly, you have to be either involved in spreading the faith, i.e. you're giving active da'wah, or you have to be involved in some form of passive da'wah. A considerable amount of your effort is going in developing the community and keeping the community alive and iman alive. If at some point a person believes that their children and their children's children and their children's children will not be on Islam, then it becomes a wajib at that time on them that they have to make that decision and leave. But if they are involved in the da'wah activities and their children are not getting hidayah, Allah has tested them with that, then that's a different story. You're putting in the effort, you're not getting the result. But what is not acceptable is that we don't put in the effort and we expect the result, right? And it's a majority opinion of the scholars. And again, so in these lands we have to be very careful about it. That if we're here, your children should know Friday night, Sunday morning, Sunday night, whichever night that you are, it's, yes, Jum'ah is there, but we're community and we come to the masjid. They have to see you bringing them at this age into the masjid, so that when they become old and they find their own paths, they will have memories of these, and eventually they would come back to these centers, inshallah. And that's why these nights are very important, to protect the next generation, to instill in them good memories of ice cream. Wallahi, they're going to remember this. When they grow up, they're going to remember that we used to go to Friday, and the only thing they're going to remember is no lectures I gave, no food that we tried to please them. The only thing they will remember is the long lines of ice cream. That's all they're going to remember. So Ibrahim alayhi salam, he says, Inni dhahibun ila rabbi sayahdin. So Allah accepted and gave him the permission, and he went. The second thing that happened in this marhala of his migration is he made a dua to Allah. Sarah, radiallahu anha, she had become very old. She was old, and she couldn't have babies. So at that time, Ibrahim alayhi salam had got a second wife. Now the story of how he got a second wife, there are two different narrations about it, but point being, he married Hajar radiyallahu anha. And Allah granted him a child through Hajar. Okay? Who was the child? Ismail alayhi salam. Amazing. Ismail alayhi salam was the first son. So he made a dua to Allah. He said, Rabbi habli min as-salihin. Oh Allah, grant me a child from the pious ones. Min as-salihin. فَبَشَّرْنَاهُ بِغُلَامٍ حَلِيمٍ. So we gave him a glad tiding that you're going to have a son that is going to be hilm, forbearance. Hilm, or the state of haluma, the Arabs, they usually describe the state when a baby is in the lap of the mother and he is suckling the breast of the mother. The state of tranquility that you find on that child when he's in that state, absolutely free of all worries of his life, that state is called hilm. Right? So that level of forbearance, that doesn't matter what happens around you, may Allah grant us that. It's a very important quality to have. That you do not allow the events around you affect you. You let that come in, but never affect you. You process it. You work through it, but it never affects you. رَبِّ هَبْلِ مِنَ الصَّالِحِينَ فَبَشَّرْنَاهُ بِغُلَامٍ حَلِيمٍ. And we already talked about this. فَلَمَّا بَلَغَ مَعِيَّهُ السَّعَى. That was the first story we start because of Dhul Hijjah. The whole story of Dhibh and stuff, we've covered that, so we're going to skip these ayahs. Then he made another dua. ثُمَّ قال, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَبَشَّرْنَاهُ بِإِسْحَاقَ نَبِيًّا مِنَ الصَّالِحِينَ. This is a very interesting story. So now Sarah, she's old. Ibrahim alayhi salam has Ismail alayhi salam. He's still a baby. And Allah gives him a glad tiding to his wife Sarah. And the entire scene is so beautiful. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَقَدْ جَاءَتْ رُسُلُنَا إِبْرَاهِيمَ. Our messengers. Who were these messengers? They were prophets or angels? Angels. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that our angels, وَلَقَدْ جَاءَتْ رُسُلُنَا, our angels, they came Ibrahim al-Bushra. They came to Ibrahim alayhi salam with the glad tiding. I think there's a typo in the ayah over here. Who knows this ayah? وَلَقَدْ جَاءَتْ رُسُلُنَا إِلَى إِبْرَاهِيمَ. صح? Right? There's a typo in the Quran here. Ajib. Can't trust the Quran. Oh, the digital one. I'm like, where's the ila? Where's my brain is crashing here. وَلَقَدْ جَاءَتْ رُسُلُنَا إِلَىٰ إِبْرَاهِيمَ بِالْبُشْرَى. They came to Ibrahim alayhi salam with the glad tiding. In the Arabic language, see, everything is very specific. What is the root word of bushra? Who said that? You said it? Who said it? What is it? Bashara. Okay. Bashara. What is bashara in Arabic? Bashar? Yes, sure. He's like pointing to himself. This is bashar right here. Can't you see a bashar? I'm right here. Bashara means skin. Bushra is a type of a glad tiding that when somebody gives you that good news, the effect of that good news, it can be seen on your skin. Bushra. It's a glad tiding that, oh my God, when you sometimes see somebody, he's like, MashaAllah, kya hua? Why are you so happy? You know, we won the volleyball championship. You don't need to ask around. Look around the faces. Anybody that has that level of bushra, you know that they're the winners of volleyball. And you look at the ones who lost, they're also here, right? You will not find that bushra there. Right? So, bushra. So they came with this glad tiding. قَالُوا salama. They said salam. Even the angels, when they enter, they say salam. قَالُوا salama. قَالَ سَلَامٌ فَمَا لَبِثَ أَنْ جَاءَ بِعِجْلٍ حَنِيذٍ. He did not wait until that he went and he brought ijl. which is a calf. Hanith is the type of cooking, i.e., it's generally you dig a hole into the ground deep enough and you let the fire burn for 2, 3, 4 hours until the wood logs, they turn into amber. And when they have turned into amber, then you bring any type of local leaf and stuff that you can use as a covering, and you cover those ambers and you put the meat on it, and then you cover it with some form of a lid, whether a mud lid or clay lid or a metal lid, and you leave the meat in it. There's no fire. It cooks through residual fire, that fire that's radiant in the earth, that fire cooks the meat. I so want to have it right now. Where's our Saudi brother? He was supposed to make us a hanith pot back in the backyard for us. We need to hold him. If anybody knows where he is, just catch him. He's been trying to escape the masjid ever since he made that promise. We need to get a hold of him. So that type of meat is called hanith. So I want you to understand, he went, slaughtered a cow, did not have fridge. Oh, honey, can you take out something from the freezer there? What do you got there? Yeah, let's take out some chuck roast for him. No. Fresh meat, slaughtered, skinned, and then cooked, placed in that oven or in the earth, brought, while he's still having conversations with him. فَلَمَّا رَأَى أَيْدِيَهُمْ لَا تَصِلُ إِلَيْهِ. He saw their hands are not reaching to this food. Why are you not eating? نَكِرَهُمْ فَأَوْجَسَ وَأَوْجَسَ مِنْهُمْ خِيفَةً. He was a bit scared and he said, that's very strange, that's odd. They're not eating. قَالُوا لَا تَخَفْ إِنَّا أُرْسِلْنَا إِلَىٰ قَوْمِ لُوطٍ. Don't be scared. We have been indeed sent to قَوْمِ Lut, the nation of Lut alayhi salam. I.e. what? Sent as glad tidings to Lut? The punishment to Lut alayhi salam. We'll talk about Lut alayhi salam and the entire story when we get to the story of Lut alayhi salam. قالت, no, and then next part, وَامْرَأَتُهُ قَائِمَةٌ. The wife of Ibrahim alayhi salam, Sarah, she was standing there listening to the conversation. She was there. قَائِمَةٌ, which means what? She was she was serving, i.e. she was either serving, he brought the food, فَجَاءَ بِيَجْلٍ حَنِيذٍ. He is the one who served, but she was there for either, do you need more? Can I get you more? She was trying to host. She was being a host over there. قَائِمَةٌ, she was standing. فَضَحِكَتْ. So she started smiling. Why did she smile? Because you don't know the purpose of her smile. Allah tells you about her smile first. فَضَحِكَتْ. Why would she smile? Sorry? But the glad tiding has not been given. It says, فَضَحِكَتْ, so she smiled. فَبَشَّرْنَاهُ, and after her smiling, we gave her the glad tiding of قَوْمِ Lut. She was fed up with the crimes of قَوْمِ Lut. And he was her brother, technically, in the majority opinion. So, if he was the brother, she was filled with pain of his brother being a Nabi, having to deal with those type of people. So when they said, man, work, he's like, alhamdulillah, Allah finally sent someone. فَضَحِكَتْ, she was happy about that fact that Allah is taking care of them. The second meaning of فَضَحِكَتْ, and this is the beauty of Arabic language. The second meaning is that she menstruated. فَضَحِكَتْ in the Arabic language is also used to describe the state of a woman to menstruate, i.e. when she menstruates, at that point, everybody around is happy that she has become a mature woman and she's entered adulthood. فَضَحِكَتْ, she menstruated, i.e. she was shocked because she was in menopause. She was not supposed to have menstruation at that age. She can't even have children. فَضَحِكَتْ, as soon as that happened, فَبَشَّرْنَاهُ بِغُلَامٍ, so we gave her the glad tiding. بَشَّرْنَاهُ بِإِسْحَاقٍ, we gave her the glad tiding of the name Ishaq. وَمِن وَرَاءِ إِسْحَاقِ يَعْقُوبٍ, and also the glad tiding that you will also have another, from Ishaq, another child, Yaqub. قالت, and still after that menstruation, she still doesn't believe. because that's one element, but to be able to conceive is another problem. So she says, قالت يا ويلتا, woe unto me, أألد وأنا عجوز. I am a woman that has passed the age of conception. I can't conceive. Am I going to give birth? وأنا عجوز. وهذا بعلي شيخا, and my husband, بعلي, my husband, he's also past that stage too. إن هذا لشيء عجيب. That's a very strange matter. What are you telling me? قالوا, the angels said. And that's very beautiful. There were multiple angels there. When Allah says قالوا, how many angels spoke? Then why is it قالوا? Why is it, if one angel spoke, then why is قالوا? Why is it jama? Why is it plural? I know two or more, yes. MashaAllah, thanks for the grammar. But if there were 10, all 10 spoke or one spoke? Shh. Your Pokemon cards can wait. Thank you. قالوا. How many said? All of them said or one said? One? So when the Imam is leading prayer, who's reciting? One. Everybody's praying, right? So قالوا, one angel spoke, representing the rest of them, as if they're all also saying the same thing. أَتَعْجَبِينَ مِنْ أَمْرِ اللَّهِ. Are you being estranged? Do you feel an estrangement from the matters of Allah, from the decree of Allah? مِنْ أَمْرِ اللَّهِ رَحْمَةُ اللَّهِ وَبَرَكَاتُهُ عَلَيْكُمْ أَهْلَ الْبَيْتِ. Allah sends His rahmah and His blessings on you, O people of the house. إِنَّهُ حَمِيدٌ مَجِيدٌ. He is the one who is the most praised and most high. Majid, مَجَّدَ يُمَجِّدُ تَعْظِيمًا, i.e. He is the most exalted. And then in a few other verses, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فأقبلت امرأة. Another, it mentions, فأوجس منهم خيفة قالوا لا تخف وبشروه بغلام عليم. They gave him a glad tiding that Ishaq alayhi salam is going to be a very knowledgeable Nabi. Can I have some of the volunteer adults to be with these kids, please? That's my son, so, I can't be with him. Then, فَأَقْبَلَتِ امْرَأَتُهُ فَصَرَّتْ فَصَكَّتْ وَجْهَهَا. She said, oh my God, am I going to give birth? And Allah even described her, like when you give a glad tiding, she could not take that. وَقَالَتْ عَجُوزٌ عَقِيمٌ. This man, he is ajuz and aqim, he can't give birth, like he's not able to. قالوا كذلك. This is the decree of Allah. قال ربك. Your Rabb have said, إنه هو الحكيم العليم. حكيم العليم. This is how the decree of Allah is, and it is going to take place because He is the most wise and the most knowledgeable. Then, this is one story of what happened with with Ibrahim alayhi salam in that realm. Then another thing that happened is Sarah now started feeling that I can't live with Hajar. As the tafsir book said, that they wanted some space. And at that point, Ibrahim alayhi salam, he gets a command from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Take Hajar and Ismail and take them to the valley. Imagine, first he leaves the land. He comes to Palestine. Now he's everything. It is mentioned in the tafsir books that he had fruition, he had money, he had wealth. Everything was going well for him. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tests him again. Well, that's great, but now you're going to take your son and you're going to go. Where are you going to go? You're going to take them to Makkah. As he is there, the entire scene we've already described in the past, when we were near Hajj and we talked about it. Right? He comes, he drops, Hajar alayhi salam, she looks at Ibrahim alayhi salam, he says, Allahu amaraka bihada, did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala command you for this? He just simply nods, and then she says, then Allah is not going to waste us. And the entire story of Jurhum and Ismail and alayhi salam being born and establishing in Makkah. As Ibrahim alayhi salam was leaving, he says what? He says, رَبَّنَا إِنِّي أَسْكَنْتُ مِنْ ذُرِّيَّتِي بِوَادٍ غَيْرِ ذِي زَرْعٍ. I have, O Allah, inni askantu, I have established, I have given my children. Inni askantu min dhurriyati, from my progeny, my children, I have established them, I have made them find sukoon. The word askantu and askan in Arabic language means housing. Housing is the place where you find sukoon. And that's what I'm saying, that I have established them so they can find tranquility and they can find a place of living. Biwadin, the quality of this valley is not that it is lush green like Georgia. The quality of this valley is that it has no vegetation. غَيْرِ ذِي زَرْعٍ. There is no vegetation. عِنْدَ بَيْتِكَ الْمُحَرَّمِ. The only quality is it's next to the house Muharram, i.e. Kaaba. It is next to Al-Bayt al-Muharram, the sanctified house, which is Kaaba. Why am I doing this, O Allah? رَبَّنَا لِيُقِيمُوا الصَّلَاةِ. I'm only doing this, O Allah, so that they establish prayer in that land. If you've ever been to Hajj, and those of you that recently came back from Hajj, 3.5 million people, you will never have shortage of two things. Fruits in that place for 3 million people. You'll never have shortage of fruit and water. Okay? Ajib. You'll never have shortage of these two things. فَاجْعَلْ أَفْئِدَةً مِّنَ النَّاسِ تَهْوِي إِلَيْهِمْ. And he made the dua, O Allah, I want the hearts of the people to gravitate towards them. Gravitate towards Kaaba. What happens? Every single one of us. Literally, I was with 3 pastors 3 days ago. I was having lunch with them and trying to see if we can do some interfaith work. And when I told them about Kaaba, the first thing the guy is like, is there a way I can go and check this out? And I was like, look, subhanAllah, this is like this guy who's leasing a church. And his first, like the minute I described to him Ishmael and this and that, he's like, is there a way I can go check this out? This is the dua of Ibrahim alayhi salam. Oh Allah, أَفْئِدَةً مِّنَ النَّاسِ, the hearts of the people, let them gravitate towards them. وَارْزُقْهُمْ مِنَ الثَّمَرَاتِ, and give them food from the fruits. The dua of Ibrahim alayhi salam. Even when my dad or your dad, they went in those days, in the 60s and the 70s. Anybody went to Makkah in the 70s here? Or in the 80s? If you went you went in 80s. Did you find fruits there? In the 80s, he found fruits there. Where was the logistics? Which airplane, where were they coming from? It was the dua of Ibrahim alayhi salam. I grew up a big portion of my life in Makkah. You could go there and find any type of fruit, any time, any place. I still have vivid memories of entering Kaaba, and if you remember this Ajiyad road, as you're going in, those before the hotels came, there used to be these markets. There used to be these peoples with these carts, and they would have fruits of all type there. وَارْزُقْهُمْ مِنَ الثَّمَرَاتِ. Why all of this? Give them food from fruits. لَعَلَّهُمْ يَشْكُرُونَ. So they are going to be thankful. Perhaps they will be thankful to me. So this is his 4th stage, where he now goes and establishes, and then he comes back. And then we'll talk about the Kaaba and the establishment of Kaaba and everything, inshallah, in detail. We'll talk about that in much more detail, inshallah, together in the next session. And that would be probably the end of the story of Ibrahim alayhi salam. And then, oh, by the way, next week is Imam Tom, not this session. Imam Tom is coming. And I told him, so we want to stick with the theme of Quranic stories. So he is going to do a session on Musa alayhi salam models fatherhood. This is for all the fathers. So we almost never talk about Musa alayhi salam's fatherhood capability. So he talks about that, and then we'll learn all of that. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in this stage, He gives us another example of Ibrahim alayhi salam. And another example is that in this marhala, in this stage of Ibrahim alayhi salam, he established himself in terms of some of the etiquettes of living and the khisal of fitrah, the innate disposition, i.e., if all of us were to be dropped in a jungle without any education and no convolution of our innate disposition or fitrah, then we would figure these 10 things out. These are called khisal of fitrah. Half of them have to do with, 5 of them have to do with the head, and the other 5 have to do with our bodies. It is mentioned that the ones that have to do with the head is what? Who can tell me? Cutting off your mustache for men, shawarib, growing the beard, siwak, toothbrush. As you know, my history teacher, he used to say, if you go back in history, people stunk. Okay, there was stench. And then you had al-khilal, i.e. those floss picks. That's not something. Ibrahim alayhi salam was the first one to invent floss picking. Okay, he should get honorariums for that, right? And then the next one, in terms of our body, washing our body after relationships with our spouses, using water to clean ourselves. Many of the people have forgotten this in these lands. As a really interesting thing, when a lot of the people went to Qatar, Amazon, they went to Qatar and they did not have paper towels, so they had to use those hand showers. Amazon had a spike of sales for hand showers when people came back from Qatar, because once you get used to water, you're like, man, what's wrong with you people? Right? So cleaning with water, cutting your nails, removing unnecessary pubic hair from the body, and circumcision. These are the fitrah that Ibrahim alayhi salam established, and he was the first one to do these things. And it is mentioned in one of the tafsirs that it mentions that وَهَذِهِ لَمْ تُنْسَخْ إِلَى يَوْمِ الْقِيَامَةِ. These things will never ever end until the day of judgment. These fitrah will remain within us until the day of judgment. And in this particular marhala, he also established salah, and we know a little bit about that salah in the surah where قَدْ أَفْلَحَ مَنْ تَزَكَّى وَذَكَرَ اسْمَ رَبِّهِ فَصَلَّى بَلْ تُؤْثِرُونَ الْحَيَاةَ الدُّنْيَا وَالْآخِرَةُ خَيْرٌ وَأَبْقَى إِنَّ هَذَا لَفِي الصُّحُفِ الْأُولَى صُحُفِ إِبْرَاهِيمَ وَمُوسَى. So قَدْ أَفْلَحَ مَنْ تَزَكَّى, the ulama, they said, is who? Ibrahim alayhi salam. وَذَكَرَ اسْمَ رَبِّهِ, he did dhikr of Allah. فَصَلَّى, and he prayed. And this information of dhikr and praying and tazkiyah can be found in the suhuf, in the scripts and scrolls of Ibrahim alayhi salam.